This just might be the most underrated ski area in the world. From the summit, you can ride the volcano in almost every direction. Welcome to Mount Bachelor in Oregon in the American Pacific Northwest. Most visitors misjudge this mountain. If you are planning your first trip to Mount Bachelor, this mountain can be either one of the most fun days of your season or a frustrating waste of time. Difference comes down to knowing a few things nobody explains clearly. Where to ride first, what lifts actually matter, and how the mountain layout works, and the mistakes that quietly ruin people's days. I just rode it for the first time, and here's what I wish I knew. Most ski resorts are built along a mountain range. You traverse across ridges and valleys. Bachelor is different. Mount Bachelor is a cone volcano. In fact, it's dormant, and you can actually ride on all sides of the volcano. And even the summit on some days, if it's open. That means long fall lines that run wide, open spaces that have fewer bottlenecks, less chaos. It feels big, calm, and spread out, and actually a local vibe to it. Who is this mountain perfect for? Skiers and snowboarders alike. This place is elite if you like wide groomers, long cruising runs, consistent pitch, room to breathe, scenic riding, lower crowd stress. If your style is flow over intensity, you will love it. It was actually a surprise to me to see that unlike most places in the country and in the world where they cater more to skiers, this place actually caters just as well to snowboarders too. In fact, it's got even a half pipe to it if you're able to do it. So I am, for context, a low intermediate snowboarder. I prefer predictable terrain and smooth runs over tight trees and sketchy steeps. For that style, this mountain is perfect. The snow is powdery, as it is in the west. It's drier. It's not so much like ice that you encounter in the east. Who might not love it though? If you are chasing extreme steeps, tight technical tree runs, huge terrain variety, park heavy features, a lively après ski scene, you might prefer Colorado or Europe, but from my experience, especially this year, the low snow count didn't really help. But that was common throughout places like Park City, Utah, or Breckenridge, and much of Summit County in Colorado. However, one thing I will say is that I was actually surprised that there was a fair amount of ski tight technical tree runs. Actually, and I'm going to give you my own experience of what I did in order to make the most out of my 2-day trip there. Bachelor is all about rhythm space, not adrenaline overload. The layout is simple. There are 3 main zones you should understand. There's West Village. This is the main base. Most people who start here are more intermediate, actually. This is where lodges are for rentals and central lifts, such as Pine. And as for Sunrise Side, which is the other part, this is the best beginner or warming up place. And it's relaxed, cruising, family friendly, wide open groomers, lots of people on, especially peak days. And I see a whole variety of people, including elderly people that are trying to ski who are disabled. I've seen quite a bit of that, actually. Surprised. It was nice to see for sure. And a lot of sunny exposure too, especially on Bluebird Day. As for Cloud Chaser, that is the other part of it. This is probably the most advanced terrain. There's more wind exposure, often better snow during storms, and if it's your first day, I wouldn't recommend going there. One thing to note, this, unlike the other two, this one isn't accessible to park your car, so keep that in mind. So when it comes to recommending where to start, especially as a newcomer, here's what I would do, and this is what exactly I did to make the most out of my trip. To make the most out of your ski or snowboarding trip at Mount Bachelor, I would recommend staying in Bend because it's only half-hour away, and there's a lot of hotel and restaurants, and including a Blockbuster and many other tourist traps. On top of that, though, too, if you don't like to bring your own stuff, there's loads of places to rent from that are actually affordable. One thing for certain is if you're coming on a peak day, like on a weekend or a holiday, even though it's half-hour away, do expect to be in the car for at least an hour because oftentimes there are lines to get into the resort or into the ski destination. There's like I believe, yes, a 4-lane highway there, and it's plowed pretty well, but the traffic gets to be pretty bad. If you're coming to Mount Bachelor to ski or snowboard, yes, the hours of operations are from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. There is no night skiing. However, if you do plan to come early, you better expect to be probably leaving the hotel or wherever you're staying probably an hour or so earlier in order to avoid the traffic jams that occur. So if you leave around 8 a.m., most likely you're not going to get there until 9:15 at least. That was my experience. Parking is kind of limited, so do be mindful of that if you want to get there on time. If you are going to Sunrise Lodge. If this is not your first time snowboarding or skiing in the western part of the United States, definitely go to West Village Lodge. There's a lot more parking, so Sunrise Lodge will often have its lots filled up within the half hour from when it opens. And do be mindful that oftentimes, yes, the ski area opens 8 a.m., but there are times where it will open at 9 a.m. and it will be full within half hour or so. While at West Village Lodge, it will be full probably in an hour because there's much more space. From my experience, what I did was I was going to Sunrise Lodge, and I spent much of my first day because you have the option at this place, like at other ski areas like Keystone and Copper, to go either a single day or do like a 3-day pass to where you take 2 of those days to go snowboard or ski. Or you could do the 5-day pass and use 3 of those days to snowboard or ski. For me, I took the 3-day pass to snowboard or ski 2 days. And what I did was right away started at Morning Glory Early Riser. Just did a little bit of that tree run. There's a small tree run at Early Riser. And then I went to go try Alpenglow. That is the other green that is pretty accessible, easy to run. And then from there, once I got the hang of things, I then took the Sunrise lift, which is the larger lift that goes to the halfway point of the mountain, and rode there to Marshmallow. Marshmallow is the other green run that starts off, and it's very easy, straightforward, and you can go back all the way down to Sunrise Lodge. It was pretty straightforward. A lot of traffic, a lot of skiers and snowboarders, so do be careful and go slow. But it's a good way to warm up. Then once I got the hang of things, I basically went to Sunrise Lodge, Sunrise Lift again, then took Marshmallow down to Avalanche all the way to the Skyliner lift line. And then from the Skyliner lift line, I took it yet again to the top and took the Summit crossover. And the Summit crossover is straight. It basically connects part of the mountain the Pine Martin area, which is part of the West Village Lodge, with the Sunrise Lodge or Sunrise area. So you take that, and it's a crossover, pretty straightforward, and went to use that to get to the West Village Get Back, and that's how I was able to transition. That's how I would recommend going from Sunrise Lodge to West Village Lodge, is take the Sunrise Get Back, or the West Village. You don't have to take any blues, thankfully. All you need to do is take West Village Get Back. It is a green run, so nothing to worry between getting from one spot to the other. As soon as I get to West Village Lodge, what I like to do is take the Little Pine lift, pretty straightforward, and go on Home Run. It's a green run. Unfortunately, Progression Park was under construction or not up because of the lack of snow we had this year. I like to take the Pine Martin lift as soon as I get the hang of the area. What do I mean by that? I like to do some maneuvering. The reason is because when you get to Pine Martin, it gets really windy up top, and it can be intimidating. It's like if you've been to like Mount Washington or some of the other East Coast areas at the top of the summits, it's awfully windy, and I've had my chairlift was moving a little bit. There's no funicular at this place. There's just, or pods like there are in other ski areas. It's just a bunch of chairlifts in every single lift at Mount Bachelor. However, what I wanted to say is that at Pine Martin, this is like the beginning of like getting into the intermediate phase, because there are a bunch of green runs that are far away from this area. For the most part, Pine Martin is mostly a blue run destination. That's if you're a little more comfortable with maneuvering and you're able to get used to the velocities that you can go, which are pretty fast. They're pretty steep. And there are some blacks, some diamonds on here too. And by the way, if you are a Midwestern skier or snowboarder, diamond blacks are not what you think they are in the Midwest. Our diamond blacks in the Midwest, because I'm from the Midwest, are basically the equivalent of blue runs out west. So how I took this route is I took Pine Martin up to the top. From there, I then did the summit crossover. And to get used to a blue run, I took Avalanche and got onto Marshmallow. However, I did wipe out, so it's not really straightforward to get onto Avalanche, because oftentimes you could end up crossing over and maybe crashing into someone who's skiing on the summit crossover, which is what intersects that. Nevertheless, what I would do is try the different blue runs, see if you can get the hang of it. My favorite run was Coffee. My last name is actually that, but that's an aside. Olympian is pretty good. And then for what I was surprised was how easy the Leeway blue run was. It was, if you're able to maneuver pretty well, you don't have to worry about going so fast like in other parts, like for example Avalanche, where it's much more steep in my opinion. But it was a good transition. Leeway, with Leeway run, it's a blue run, you're able to get right away to the half pipe. I wouldn't say right away in the sense, but like if you feel intimidated, like for example some of these blue runs like Thunderbird and Iceberg, they're pretty steep and they are intimidating for a first timer. I would say avoid those once you get off the Pine Martin lift. Try and take the Leeway. You just have to take a left and go from there, and the signs should be there. It should be straightforward. And if you are already used to snowboarding and skiing, still, leeway is highly recommended because you can get to the half pipe, and it's just 13 feet. Nothing intimidating like it is in Copper. So it's definitely a good place to start practicing doing like straight airs or pumping, that type of stuff. But I would say one thing, there's no one that's checking the half pipe, so do be mindful of when someone drops in. And also, as soon as you're done with the half pipe, you have to go down all the way to the Pine Martin lift. And unfortunately, the Pine Martin lift is probably one of the longest line and popular lifts, partly because it's kind of like the crossroads to everything. Oftentimes, the red lift line is closed. It was closed when I went. So that's how I would go about that part, the West Village Lodge. Once you get used to the different runs like Iceberg and Old Skyliner, DSQ, and West Boundary, I would say what I did is I went to Ed's Garden, and that was a transition point. Outback Way and Ed's Garden are blue runs, but these blue runs are a little more steeper than the ones that I had mentioned earlier, because these go to the Outback lift, which is another part where it's more advanced. Now you get to start seeing more Diamond Blacks that are long. Like, for example, Down Under West, that is a doozy. There's a lot of tree lines right there. So when I said earlier about lack of tree lines, that's probably the exception there. Boomerang is also there. It's right underneath the lift, the chairlift. And also, my favorite blue from there that's pretty straightforward, I had a good time with, was Down Under West. Because Ed's Garden was very steep. It felt almost like a Diamond Black. And you know what's ironic? My first black, Diamond Black run was Bushwhacker. And that felt easier than Ed's Garden, actually. Kangaroo is another blue. And that's a pretty straightforward one. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go try the other ones that are right by Northwest lift, which is the one further out, because it was closed. I think it might have been because of the lack of snow, because that would have gave me the chance to go on the Northwest crossover, but it was closed. And you could try all sorts of Diamond Black bowls and all that stuff. So once I got the hang of that part, then I went to the furthest out. So I took the Summit crossover. That's how I'd go about it. And then I took a small blue run called Chicken Foot. And that allows me to get onto the I-5. The I-5 is a green run. And that gets you, then, if you transition well, you could get onto the Bluebird. And that gets you to the Cloud Chaser. The Cloud Chaser is the other lift where there's a lot of blues. But unlike the one I mentioned earlier, this one is probably slightly easier than Outback because there are no blacks. It's pure blues. So I kind of did it in reverse. So I would recommend go to Cloud Chaser before going to Outback. Because in Cloud Chaser, you got excellent runs. You got Cirrus, Clark's J, White Bark, and Winoga Way. Winoga Way is probably the most scenic one I've had to go. But they close earlier, by the way. I should note that like a lot of western mountains, there are no lights surrounding. There's no night skiing. So the whole mountain closes at 4 p.m., but a lot of these places that are further away from the main lodges, like I said, these lifts like Cloud Chaser and Outback, they close half hour earlier, 3:30. And some of the runs like Winoga Way that are further out even, they close even earlier than that. Their last chairs are like 4:15 or so. So do be mindful of that. Try to get those out of the way first. And after that, I was able to get to Jetstream, Flying Dutchman, and the blue part of I-5, as well as Carnival. It was pretty good. Overall, I liked it. There's a lot of powdery, excellent snow. Unfortunately, the summit, which is the other part, is probably the most amazing. That's like, you have to be lucky to get there because that's closed many times. It was closed throughout my entire visit. I didn't get to go. But man, is it amazing to see the entire view from what I've seen from YouTube videos and friends and all that. I've gone, you can see the entire like Cascades almost, like at least in the Oregon side. And wow, just breathtaking. And to think that that whole mountain is just one big giant ski resort, or not resort, but ski mountain. It's just epic. And then the other side of the mountain is a bunch of back bowls, like Backside, Serengeti, Cow's Face, East Bowl, and so on and so forth. Luckily, there's a catch line at the other end. So unlike any other place I've ever been to, I think this is the only place in the United States and America that you can ski or snowboard the entire 360 view aside, every single side of the mountain. There's a catch line to it, so you never have to worry about being in the middle of nowhere and not getting any help. There's assistance everywhere. That is probably its biggest unique selling proposition, what Mount Bachelor is special for. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see all and get to ride all the pieces. And I definitely am going to try and see if I can make another visit in the future in order to do the backside bowls and go to the summit. Because, man, was there a lot more to snowboard and ski than I could have done and anticipated. So, overall, my honest experience, it was really good. I thought this place is probably underrated in the sense that it wasn't as crowded as I would have expected. And staff were nice. It gets crowded, though, if you're going on special weekends like President's Day or Martin Luther King or after Christmas. But not to the same extent as like other places like Summit County, Breckenridge, for example, or Copper or Vale do. I just wish that I would have had more of a chance to explore more of the mountain. But unfortunately, weather didn't cooperate to where they felt they could open, like, for example, the summit. I wanted to really see the summit. And one thing that frustrates me is that, and this is not particularly for here, but just in general, like the lack of lighting infrastructure in order to have night skiing, at least for part of the mountain. It doesn't have to be for the whole thing. I understand the economics behind it, but it'd be kind of nice to have that because I know in the Midwest, like, for example, Wisconsin, in Michigan, they have night skiing in almost every single area. Yes, it's because they're just hills and it's easy to do the installation of that and set that up. But it just would be nice to have that, like is the case, I think, with Keystone in Colorado, which is, I think, it does have night skiing, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to say that when it comes to, like, coming back here now, I definitely would come back here. However, I should note that it's not on an Epic or Icon Pass, if I'm not mistaken. So Mount Bachelor's got its local vibe to it. That's one thing I do like about it. However, I should say the pricing and all that, it is pretty expensive. Not like Colorado or Utah, like Park City, but it's not as cheap as it is, for example, as like Schweitzer in Idaho, or I was going to say when I went to Big Bear, although I think I went to Big Bear later in the season to where it was cheaper. But yeah, the food was not cheap by any stretch of the means. Just so you know, it closes at 3 p.m., so you gotta get your hot cocoa and coffee earlier. Not like me. But maybe that's just the Pacific Northwest thing, because I would say, for example, like gasoline, they were more expensive than where I'm used to or where I'm from. So if I had to give an overall experience. It's not an intense skiing, snowboarding destination. It's more of a go with the flow, explore scenic type of skiing, snowboarding destination that's very family friendly and does have its diversity in terms of offering to every single type of snowboarder or skier. So just a word of the wise: do not take the wraparound if you have a snowboard because it's flat. Just so you know. But this is one of the few places in North America where you can actually snowboard or ski around an entire mountain or volcano. Overall, I would have to give this place a 7 out of 10, but definitely am open to suggestions. So if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up and comment. Have you been here? Is there a place that's better? What do you guys think? Do you think this makes this place unique, that it's a volcano that you can go completely around the whole thing all yourself? And also, tell me if I'm wrong, and I'd like to get some feedback, and I'll give a second opinion as soon as I'm able to return, for sure. Thank you, guys, and as always, follow me as we travel together. This is Coffee Travel, signing out.